First of all, thanks everybody for joining again. We are going to finish up Google today. It's such a complex topic. What I attempted to do is really hone it down to what do you need to know as a franchise broker? What do you need to know as a franchise salesperson about Google, how it works, and then best practices for generating leads. So Google isn't the black box and the source of mystery, so you can hold your agencies accountable, number one. And number two is give them feedback, right, that they need to be able to do a good job for you. And I was telling you, generating leads on Google is really not that hard, right? It's got a lead being defined as a form fill. That's not hard, right? But getting buyers, which are, I'm asserting, if we go back to previous sessions, a buyer is not a subset of a lead. Like you don't get 100 leads and in the leads are one buyer. You get 100 leads and out of those 100 leads, there's no buyers. Right? You get one buyer that signs your form and you got a buyer. That's really how you start needing to look at lead generation. That there's buyers and there's everybody else. And that a buyer is no more a subset of leads. Is right now I'm kind of watching a lot of the NBA playoff matches. They get those 8-10 minute summary videos on YouTube. So I'm getting my NBA fix. There's people in the stands and they're going crazy, right? So leads are like the people in the stands and buyers are like players on the court. What you want are the people on the court. That's who really get advertised to. Now, people in the stands are going to come along because it's a spectator sport. So we talked about 75% of the people polled almost every single year want to start a business, but only about 11% of Americans are self-employed. And it's kind of always been that way. So, so we want to make sure that we're capturing much of that, 11% of people are going to be self-employed, which translates into only about 15,000 franchise buyers, and not worry so much about the masses that may burn your human capital, but really are never going to buy. So, and then the other talked about lead generation. Really, there's no such thing as lead generation, right? It really breaks into three prongs as it relates to franchising. One is generating traffic. That's what digital marketing is. You're generating traffic and you're moving it to the website primarily so they can, as Paul Harvey used to say, get the rest of the story. Now, the website, we are going to get into how to design a well-constructed website with an authoritative brand story in a way that makes a difference. That's going to be future sessions, but you got to get them to your site. And the content on the site has to be enough where it answers and satisfies their demands for information and breaks down any barriers to conversations that'll exist. In other words, your content on the site is what earns you or stops you from having a conversation. Okay, so that's the content on the site, and then the call to action is fill out the form, and then generally there's a request for more information. Now, keep in mind when people fill out a form on a site, they're requesting more information, not more conversation. So when we design a site with FPG, we usually break down into kind of two facets. We call it phase one content, which is what we put on the site, and phase two content, which is more of a deeper dive. We like to do very robust ebooks that really tell a robust brand story in a way that the components just build on each other. The challenge with a website is you can have a great brand story, but people are going to read it chapter 1, chapter 7, chapter 3, chapter 19, chapter 7, fill out the form, maybe not read all the chapters. They get some downloadable ebook. Our typical FPG ebook might range from 16 pages to, I'm looking at one today, I just got it back from the graphic artist, I think it's 32 pages. Now, a lot of it's graphics and tables, so it's not like it's 70,000 words, but it's robust. So by the time that they read that information, download it, they should be able to tell you what makes this business unique, what makes it profitable, what makes it valuable to the customer, what makes it defensible in the marketplace, what the investment and risk is, what the return is, so the item 19 information, and at the end of the day, what makes this a possible valuable investment for the right person. Now, if the buyer journey is like a football field of 100 yards, by the time they read the ebook, what are we shooting for, right? They're not going to be ready to punch it into the end zone and stroke a check the first time they talk to you, right? What they're going to do, we want them to get to about the 30 to 50-yard line, right? So they're at that point of almost like cautious optimism. So if you cut them open in their heads, they're saying to themselves, I don't know if this is right for me, but this really looks like an interesting business, valuable, and then worth taking a look at. That's kind of where you want to go with this cautious optimism. So if 1 to 10 is the scale and 10 means they're ready to stroke a check and 1 is, maybe I want to start a business. Yeah, we want them off the site somewhere between maybe 3 to 5. That makes sense? And then when we get into how to construct a website, we'll also give you examples of what our ebooks are, which I think is one of the most important pieces of content a site can create. And we were talking about, what a site looks like. We have a deep dive. I like deep research information. Put it in the chat box. See how good your memory is. I was saying, how much time does a typical franchise buyer spend on a franchise opportunity website? Put it in the chat box. See if you remember. 3 to 6 hours. Very good. Yeah, we've been able to track a good 3.5 hours. Thank you, Carl. Right on FPG sites, and that was up from about 1 hour, and that's over 18 visits. And 9 of those visits would be before they filled out the form. So now leads will fill out the form on the first visit or second visit. Buyers have a tendency to ghost a little bit and then come back on the 8th, 9th, and 10th visit, and that's when they request more information. So now you can kind of see how things like Google retargeting, when we get into that, how important that is to keep your ads and keep your message front of mind, and how important lead nurturing content is. So we were saying when the lead comes in, so number 1 would be traffic generation, 2 is conversion on the website, and then the third prong to lead generation would be lead nurturing content. So we break out our lead nurturing content into 2 buckets. So bucket number 1 is a 10 to 14 day program. It's only designed to get the phone in the franchise salesperson's hand. That's it. It's got one purpose. And then the people will respond and they're in the pipe, or they didn't respond. Non-responders, we put them in a kind of a drip campaign. Something like we're touching them once every 2 weeks or once a month, right? It's kind of a resuscitation campaign, right? So if they were in the hospital, we'd be calling it putting them on life support. And then with the invitation, that's for them to come off of life support at any point in time they choose to. So now, out of traffic generation, I was saying our most important source of traffic generation would be Google. And I was saying, why is that? And I was defining lead generation as intersecting somebody who wants what you have at their point of interest. Now, if that's a reasonable definition of lead generation, I'll say it again: intersecting someone who wants what you have at their point of interest. Well, where do most people go when they want something? Everybody who buys your business is going to be on Google. Now, they may or may not be searching for your business, but they're going to be there. And then Google breaks down into 2 buckets. There's Google paid search ads. That's when they're actually doing the physical searches. Your ad comes up, and then reach campaigns where they're display ads, kind of like Facebook. Right now, Facebook and Google display are alike in the sense that you're trying to intersect somebody who wants what you have at their point of interest, but it's more you're pushing your ads towards them because you don't, it's a reach campaign. You don't know who they are. You don't know if what's at their point of interest. But if you cast a wide enough net, the odds are you will intersect. So that's the two ways to use Google. But paid search is most efficient because they're actively looking for you and they're taking committed action in the form of search. Okay. And then we touched on, well, what should I be looking at? How do I know my campaigns are working? And I was showing you some things that this is kind of when we go head to head with other agencies. The first thing to look at is impression share. So does anybody remember what impression share measures? So it's how many times your ad shows when it could have shown. So if, let's say, coffee franchise. So somebody's looking for a coffee franchise, they pop coffee franchise or some related search terms into that. The ad shows up over 50% of the time. That's good. You can't get to 100 even if you spend a lot. We usually get somewhere in that 40 to 60 band is kind of typical for us. But you can kind of see where the competition is. Most of the time, it's under 10%. So our ads showing up 50% of the time with highly targeted franchise-related search terms, and everybody else is 1 out of 10. We're 1 out of 2. So we're getting in front of the right audience more time. Second thing is top of the page rate. Okay. So the way Google search ads, we're talking search ads now, the way that they show on a page, there's a bucket of search ads, then there's the organic, the SEO type ads where it's not paid, it's just showing up organically. Okay, and then the bottom of the page are more search ads. Now the data would show bottom of the page search is a waste of money. So what you're really looking for is top of the page. And anything over 80% is good. We're usually in that 85 to 90 band. Here we're at 84, so not too far off. So our ads are showing up, 50% of the time, and almost 9 times out of 10, we've got the real estate in the top half, which is good. And the last one we look at is absolute top of the page. So that's how effective were you to get the number one piece of real estate? That's gold, right? So in this particular campaign, not only did our ads show up 5 times more than anybody else, we also captured the top position more than anybody else, which is key. And that's why the campaign is working. So those 3 things are really key to look at. Now, a lot of times I see agencies don't report this stuff. And if my ads were showing up less than 10% of the time, they're supposed to be showing up. I don't know if I'd want to report that either. But this is the stuff that you need to be looking at. And now if you get into more of the granulars, like how are these particular campaigns are doing, the way we design campaigns, and people will design it differently, we have a couple buckets. So one we call industry search. So that would be when they're looking for your category. So Kevin's on the phone with Coffee Beanery. So when they're looking for a coffee franchise, but not necessarily Coffee Beanery, we put all coffee and coffee shop related searches all under industry search. Okay, and then competitive brands. Yeah, so Joe Davis is on the phone here, and he's with Sneaky Bird. So there's a ton of chicken franchise concepts. So we like to buy that are bigger than Sneaky Bird. So we like to buy the traffic from people who are spending a lot more money in advertising than we are. So all the brands we're competing against would go under competitive search. Competitive search. Okay. And then the brand search would be the specific brand. We like to protect our own traffic. So whatever brand we're working with, so if it was like Sneaky Bird, we're buying some advertising on our own brand to really push the competitors away so we can occupy the top piece of real estate. Because remember, the paid searches come before the organic, right? So I don't want my competitors showing up on my search before my name, right? So we try to spend a little money on the brand to get that top piece of real estate. And then there's display retargeting, and those are those little ads that kind of follow you around, right? So what we're finding is a lot of the success we're having, especially lately, is coming off of the display retargeting. So remember we talked about buyers go to the site, but they might not convert until the 8th or 9th visit. Well, that's where the display retargeting kicks in. We capture their IP, and then we actually put ads in their feed until they convert. Make sense? So they're very highly targeted because they've been to your site and they clicked on your call to action. So if you look at the key here, I like to look at click-through rates. So click-through rate means how many times they actually clicked on your call to action, which is usually what takes people to the website. On the display, Google would say anything over 0.5% is good. We seem to range somewhere between 0.65, and this is actually a pretty good retargeting campaign for us, getting closer to 1. But we try to shoot for about 20% over what Google says is acceptable. And you can see the click-through rates have a tendency to go up when you're dealing with search. That's why I like search, right? So Google would say 3 to 5% on search is typical across all their campaigns. Where I think 3.14 or something being their average. You could see when people are clicking on industry search campaigns like chicken franchise, we're actually converting at almost 9%. So a lot less impressions or traffic to get to a lead on a Google search. When they hit our competitors, we're still getting a nice 8% flow through. And this is on a smaller brand we're seeing. Typical FPG brands, when you're doing a competitive search or industry search, we're seeing 8 to say 17%, sometimes as high as 25% on the click-through rates. Which is, so make sure you know what your click-through rates. And then the conversion rate is what happens when it hits the site, right? So the click-through rate really shows how effective is the ad at generating traffic to the site. And then the conversion is, I don't think has anything to do with the ad. If it's the right traffic and you got the right content, it should convert. I think the conversion rates, I think, is a function of the quality traffic. So how well you've constructed your Google campaigns and who are you advertising to, but also what's the brand story you're telling on your site. And I do see a lot of websites are woefully inadequate as it relates to content. Again, our research shows 3.5 hours spent on a site, 18 visits. A lot of websites are not constructed to have anybody come back past 1 visit, which, as you can see, is a mistake. Might generate leads, but might repel buyers at the same time. So the conversion rate, we're showing on the display retargeting, out of the 100 people that we hit to the site off of display retargeting, where 7 are leaving their contact information. On the competitive search, you see that decrease because they're really not looking for you; they're looking for the competitors, right? So, but there, we're converting at 1.5. On the industry search, which would be category-related franchise searches, over 2. For a blended rate of 2.5 on search, and then 7% on display. And at a cost per lead on average of $193. And if you see the total number of leads, it was on this particular, we had 108 leads, 40 through the search, 68 through display. Let's call 108 leads. Google leads should close at a rate of maybe 1 to 2%, depending on the brand. So that means if we're doing this every month, there's a deal a month somewhere in the pipe. Make sense? If it's done right. And if it's one deal, the cost of acquisition would be about $19,000. And if it's 2 deals, it would be $10,000. If it's a deal and a half, you'd be at about $15,000. So FPG, we shoot for a cost of acquisition. In other words, how much do you have to spend in advertising to acquire a franchisee? I try to keep it in that 10 to 15 band. We have it as low as 6 and 7,000. Anything over 15,000, it's hard to justify our retainers. So, we try to break that 15. Okay. And we talked about how the website converts is an important part of the overall equation. And when I go to these franchise conferences, I keep hearing, 1% the traffic, 1.3% is kind of a litmus test of what to expect, when I hear these panels or I see data presented. I will tell you, the websites we design, we've got 2 or 3 projects going right now. My failure number is 2%. So if my websites aren't converting twice the national average or twice what people are telling me to expect, for us, that's a problem. And we go into problem identification instead of patting ourselves in the back and saying, hey, yay, we're doing over 2%. This particular site generates between 2 and almost as high as 3, but not quite. So a typical FPG site would be 2 to 5%, but I like that kind of 2 to 3% is pretty typical. Now, the reason I also website is really important because you go back to here, I like to see our conversions of the website be consistent with the conversions of the advertising. So if the website's converting at, let's say, 2.3, 2.5, well, we're doing good on display retargeting. Competitive search is at 1.5. And I might say to myself, you know what, but they're not really looking for us. So that in and of itself is probably okay. Brand at 28%, that means they are looking for us, and we're capturing the lead as opposed to our competitors. Industry search, so when they're looking for the broad category of what are my options in that category, 2%, that's pretty consistent with what the website's converting at. So I think that's good. So overall, Google search at 2.5, which is pretty consistent where the website is. So I know that my lead generating traffic, right, the ads I'm paying for, the traffic I'm paying for, seems to be converting almost at the same rate as the organic traffic. So that tells me it's the right traffic. When I see wide disparities between the overall conversion rate and the paid advertising rate, it tells me that maybe I need to go back to my campaign and tighten up a bit or a lot, or redesign or reconstruct my campaigns if it's too far off. Now, does that make sense? Because that's really important stuff. Now, I'll stop here. Questions? I know I throw a lot at you guys. Okay, well, I will keep plowing forward. I'm going to take the lack of quiet that you're all complicit in my moving forward. Well, thank you, Joe. Makes sense. Okay. Now, at the end of the day, what's the most important metric? I can manipulate leads. Because it's just getting people to fill out forms, right? But I sat in your chair. I approach advertising in our agency as a chief development officer, not as a marketing guy where more is more, right? So for me, I don't lead count is nice. It's also a manipulated number. I can make it go up. I can make it go down. I can make it skyrocket if that's what I want. But that's not what I want, because that means I'm just getting more of the people in the stadium and not enough players in the field. So, for us, we've seen our leads go down, when we take out a new client significantly, and I'm okay with it as long as closable deals in the pipeline goes up, because that's the only statistic that matters, right? So we find that a typical franchise salesperson can work, say, 20 to 25 active closable leads in their pipe at all points in time. Now, this happens to be franchisee recruiter that works with FPG. So one of the things we won't do is clutter our pipeline with people who say they're on hold. Right. So these are actually active people that are taking the next step in the pipeline, right? Taking the next step, I should say, in the recruitment process. They're qualified and they're active and they're taking the next step, right? Now we find we need 18 at all point in time. So running tally of 18 to hit our objectives of 40 deals in that calendar year. As long as we have 18 based on our calculations, we're good. This happens to be account Corey is on the phone. This happens to be account Corey's working. So Corey's maintaining 20 active candidates and he's closing 3 to 4 deals a month, which is consistent with that 40 deals. So right now we're on track. And this is the only thing that matters. Now, when you go back to lead generation, lead count, that would be here, that 108. A lot of leads aren't trackable. Think about how you guys use Google on the phone. Do you ever you Google something, the ad comes up, you see the brand, and instead of clicking on the call to action, you do more Google searches on the brand, okay, and then you go to the brand website. Well, that doesn't show up, right? I can't track that. That doesn't show up as a paid advertising lead, even though it is. Now, Google would say that as much as 50% of the leads in your pipe will show up as organic. So when you're looking at these numbers, we actually fold in organic leads into our advertising because it's hard to determine. It's really part of the whole picture. It's really hard. The advertising that you can track is directional. It's not absolute. What's absolute is your organic leads, because that actually could come in off your paid advertising, plus your paid advertising. And then most importantly, okay, what's in your pipe. And when you get a deal done, it's really important to pull up that lead and make sure you have all the IP information captured so you have the lead source. And if you can, even capture the campaign that created that lead. Like give you, for instance, anybody just put in the chat box, what's your time frame from lead to close? Just throw it in the chat box. Yeah, 8 to 12 weeks. Very good, right? So we're seeing 120 days. Corey's at 97 days. I might have already changed all the advertising, right? So just to avoid ad fatigue, right? So what happens is we may actually have changed an ad if we can't source it back to the campaign that's working, right? So it's not only important to track the source, it's pretty important to track the ad campaign too, if you can. And there's different ways to capture that information and get it and parse it into the CRM. Now, when we're setting up campaigns, I think I touched on this, that we start with 4 campaigns. So one would be the category search. So, pizza franchise, for instance, competitive traffic, which we do the other brands, protect our own brand traffic, and then retargeting, which is people have been to the website but that haven't converted yet. And then there's 3 ways we talked about how to set up a campaign. And this is where a lot of mischief comes in. There's exact match, which the terms have to be exact and in the same order. There's a little deviation, but not much. So if we put in say chicken franchise or pizza franchise or coffee shop franchise, it'd have to have coffee shop franchise and maybe even in that order for your ad to show. So that's overly restrictive. Most agencies don't use exact match. We use phrase match because I want franchise. I want how to start this business. I want business opportunity. I want these transactional phrases, okay, to show up in the search. I don't necessarily care in what order. And I want it to be broad. So if they're looking for a franchise, they're looking for a business opportunity, they're even exploring how much to start, or what the best is in that category. I want our ads to show. So we go with phrase match, which gives us more latitude over the searches, but also puts up some boundaries not to show up in consumer related searches. I will tell you, when we are auditing campaigns, we see a lot of broad match. That might mean coffee shop or franchise, right? So that's where the mischief comes in, right? So because it's so broad, you get so many impressions, but it's bad traffic. It's not people who are looking for a business. It could be people looking for anything. They're looking for your shop, looking for your service, trying to make a complaint, looking for a job, right? So, but they'll fill out the form, which is what the ad agencies really like to report on, as form fills, but they don't really have optics into your pipeline and don't necessarily put high value in the fact that they're burning your human capital. And that's why, a lot of times, you always get leads and you're like, hey, is Bob there? And they say, this is Bob. Hey, this is Joe from XYZ franchise. You requested some information about our franchise. No, I didn't. Right? I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't request any, because it's random. Why? Because they weren't requesting information about your franchise in their world. And a lot of that you can tie right back to broad match. So broad match, if you go in that category, the second thing you have to do is you got to populate these searches with these negative terms. And we talked about that a little bit too. Yes, right. So a negative term means if somebody puts in these words, your ad doesn't show up. So you're programming the algorithm to withhold your ad. So we have a bunch of bank of negative terms like complaints, hours of operation, nearest to me, specials, coupons, all the kind of the stuff that people may Google the brand or Google the category, but they're consumer related Google. So we strip our ads out. So we make sure we're not only using broad match, right? So we stop using broad match. We only use phrase match. That puts up some guardrails. And then a second set of guardrails is with the negative search terms. That's why when our clients, they don't see a lot of spam. They don't see a lot of people that say that they haven't requested information about the franchise because, while it's imperfect, we may get that from time to time. Those guardrails work. Questions on that? Now, how do you design an ad? And here's the answer. You don't. Google designs the ad. I want you to hang out with this concept for a second. Because just put in here yes or no in the chat box. Have you ever been consulted by your agency on headlines or descriptors so they could design your ads properly? Yes, no. Yeah, no, right? So here's how the ads work, okay? So when I'm programming campaign, minimum I'm putting in 10 headlines. So the headlines are only, it's 30 characters, right?
Correct. It's 30.
30 characters in a headline. So that's just a kind of a few words, right? And it's got to be, the headlines need to be consistent with the searches. So what happens is what Google does, let's say it's chicken, what's the most profitable chicken franchise? Let's say that's the question. They're going to look for an ad with a headline programmed, most profitable chicken franchise. And those are the ads they're going to show. So not only do you have to, you got to program or pick the right searches, the headlines have to resemble the searches. Now, being franchise salespeople, intuitively, you're going to know what questions people are going to ask when they're searching a business like yours. Well, those are the search terms you're buying, right? And intuitively, you're going to know, okay, how to write a headline. Get it down to 30. Get it down to 30 characters, so your ad can show up. So this is why, like, the mechanics of Google, the back end stuff is pretty complex. But the logic of it really is not all that complex, and it's geared to what you do for a living because you know what a lead looks like. You know the questions that they ask. Yet that information never seems to make it to the agency, who doesn't know, who's never worked a lead in their life, who are making these decisions for you. And I think that's the mischief and the disconnects that occur. You're not in each other's world. You don't know what it's. You never designed a Google campaign. They never worked the lead. Yet somehow this is supposed to work out for both of you, right? It's a little bit nutty and disconnected. So that was the driver for us doing these academy things. So Google designs the ad. So the first thing when Google does a search, okay, the algorithm kicks up, okay, and they're going to look for a headline that resembles that search or that query. So we do a minimum of 10. It could be as many as 20 headlines. Google will pick 3 or 4 and actually put that into the top of the ad, right? So royalties start at 1%. So that might be a Google search. This one in particular, we're looking at the category was so crowded. We were really pushing low entry cost, which is some of the highest search volume in franchising. So royalties at 1%, download our free ebook, low entry cost under 100K. If somebody looking for a pool cleaning franchise, we like to pin average unit volume sales. So that means that copy shows up on a lot of the advertising. Google ultimately designs the ads. We could pin it and make it show up more. Google dings you a little bit on ad quality, which means that can hurt your number of impressions. But we do see that it's actually more effective. It creates some effectiveness and some sticky traffic. So it's not a bad trade-off. So Google will pull the headlines, and that's what's in blue. Okay. And then you have what they call descriptors, and that's 100 characters. Now spaces are a character, punctuation is a character, so that's not 100 words. It's 100 characters, so letters, spaces, and punctuation. So you program into the campaign 3 to 5, let's say, descriptors. Google will choose what they think is the best descriptor based on the inquiry, right? So Google will look at the bank. So there comes an inquiry. What's the most profitable chicken franchise? Well, I'm going to look for headlines that say profitable chicken franchise. That's first. And then I'm going to go to the descriptors and say, which of these 4 or 5 descriptors talk more about profitability according to their algorithms? They're going to dump that into the ad. And then you get an ad like this. Now, the goal here is also to generate traffic, right? So to the website. So one of the things that you can do with Google is you can actually pull links from your site. So that's why we like a robust franchise opportunity website, because I want to link to Google. So what if this ad didn't do it? Okay. Maybe what would do it? Businesses for sale, why pool works, what's our process? Okay, how much money can I make is a big one. Put the item 19 information in there. So different links back to your site. Most people will click the call to action up here, but we get quite a bit of traffic from the site links, which I think is so Christian, no link is useless. Then there's a text ad that goes nowhere. Christian, come off of if you're. I'm not sure where you're going here.
Has anybody not ever clicked on a Google ad and then it just pops up with like 2-3 lines of text and it doesn't take you to anything? Like there's no landing page. They're totally useless ads.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
Right. So
well, yeah,
I mean, you've got to have a link is just a basic requirement if you want to get any click through or anything. Otherwise, they're just totally. You might as well just take your money and flush it down the toilet. It's,
usually, Christian, the up here in the blue, those are all links.
And now I clicked on one this morning that took me to a dead link. It was actually for a good brand too. It was for Puma. right?
It
So you
happens.
see them all the time, and just be wary of it. I 100% agree with exactly what you're preaching here, Joe.
And with the site links, one of the things I like about the site links, it makes the ad almost look like a mini website, and it creates more distance. So it shows up. You get more real estate, right?
Yeah.
So, and you're trying to break free from ad clutter and differentiate yourself. I'm really surprised how many agencies don't do site links.
Yeah, I'm amazed by it. A lot of them will take you to a landing page, which is like a mini piece,
right,
to get to the form fill. That can work too, because all they're really trying to do is measure that click through, right?
It's interesting. We do it. We've done it both ways, right? So, landing pages will convert higher than a website, but it doesn't mean they're going to get more buyers in the pipe.
Yeah.
Right. So we find that the people that actually get into the pipe want the data, right? And they want to self-qualify and they want the brand story. Typically, what you're not getting from a landing page, which is basically the weekly reader of anybody remember the weekly readers when you were a kid? Yeah, the weekly reader of that particular brand. It's kind of a one-pager. So what they want is 3.5 hours of data, which you just can't squeeze onto a landing page. But very good feedback. Thank you, Christian. So what makes a good ad? So I would encourage you to look at your ads and know what your ads look like and have the agencies send you screenshots like we have screenshots here. So what they should have is site links. That's this again down here. That's for me, that's a no-brainer, right? And the site links could, this should make sense. FAQ is a good site link. The product offering, this is what we're selling. Even a site link that says request more information, it takes them to the form is a good site link. Then download more information. That's a good site link, right? That's a real strong call to action. Because notice in the ads, here's your site links here, but that's not a call to action. Download more information. It's almost like it's assumed. So having a real specific download information or learn more site link is pretty important. When you're talking about targeting, this is another piece of information, a lot of mischief that comes out with Google. Google, you can target. It's there. The way to target, I mean, it's not robust, right? You target by age, and the ages are typically, under 24 or thereabouts, in 10-year increments. So like 24 to 35, 35 to 44, et cetera, and so on. Now, think about your franchisees. What are the age of the franchisees that buy? Well, most of the concepts we work with, if you get, $500,000 net worth, you're probably not 24. And if it's a complex business, I don't know if anybody of you has ever hired a 24-year-old, but I don't know if I'd put him in the franchisee seat in a lot of businesses that we have. So we like to target in that 35 to kind of 54 range, which seems to be where most people buy businesses. Now, again, it's very concept specific. Like we're taking on a kind of a man in a van concept that's just perfect for somebody who hustles, right? Well, and it's low entry cost. Well, we're going to double up on that 25 to 34 in that Pacific, right? You can target by gender. So Google limits you to 2 genders, so deal with it. And male, female, and then unknown. A lot of Google has lost their ability to target, so you make sure you got to click the unknown, or your traffic is going to be very restricted. So, so you can target by gender, household income. When sometimes we take over a campaign, I don't see this used, right? So, do you know 50% of the population of the United States? I read a study. I was working with one of those check cashing kind of concepts, and 50% of the population of the United States doesn't have a checking account. So why should we be targeting the top 50, the bottom 50% of income if they can get the data. The top 40%, when you get into 40s, you got a household income about 75 grand. Put in perspective, the national average, I think, in the United States, 57. So when we target unknown, because a lot of Google has lost their ability to target, and we usually start at 40% of the household, work our way up to the top 10%. Parental status, you can target. Good geo-targeting by location. So make sure you're not spending money in advertising in cities that you don't want to be in. So that happens quite a bit, or states you don't want to be in, or your registration states, right? If you lost, like everybody, pretty much everybody on the phone lost their registration in New York, California, and Illinois, and now we're struggling to get that back. Are we spending money there? Do we want to spend money there? Should we pause the dollars and kind of put it somewhere else? And the other thing would be, a lot of times when spam comes in, you get these ads from people that we could tell are just trying to hack the system or whatever. A lot of that comes in after midnight till about 6 o'clock in the morning, because it's coming in from overseas, right? So I like to leave the campaigns open 24 hours unless I start seeing spam. Then I'm gonna cut the hours back. Arsh and I, we just eliminated spam from a campaign by dialing the hours back from 7 in the morning or 6 in the morning until 11 at night. All of a sudden, spam stopped. So you can do it that way. Now, here's a trick Google does that they don't tell you, and the ad agencies don't correct. So you could do all your targeting perfectly, okay, in the system, and pick all your right targets and say you just want the state of Texas or whatever. You type these states. Deep within Google, they have this black box that says the search network and then your display network, which supersedes all your targeting, all your geographic targeting. So here, if these boxes are clicked, which is the default position of Google, your ads can be shown in Vietnam. You're going to be burning, but you ever get like leads that come in from overseas and you're like, what the hell? Oh my God, I'm not spending money. And then, when you look at where my leads come in, you get those reports, they show you where the leads come in. All of a sudden, like Mogadishu starts showing up on your lead report. And you're like, what the heck? How did we get that? This is how. It's because these are checked. And Google is trying to blow your budget. And this is kind of new. We stumbled on that about 6-8 months ago. They added this screen in a different part of the buried within their tools. Okay. Now, how do you design your ads? I will tell you, you can do a perfect campaign. Remember, we showed you that the display ads often will outperform or generate more leads, especially in retargeting, than your search ads. So display ads are really important. I will tell you, display ads that we've taken down. You ready? Sink your teeth into this mouth-watering opportunity. Now look how much copy you have in these display ads. Reel in customers with real seafood. Own a t-shirt business that fits you like a tee. Own your slice of the $50 billion pizza pie. That's the crap that agencies are putting out and trying to entice somebody who wants to invest a risk of $1 million in your business, and they're seeing that crap. Right? So our ads, I don't think they're very creative, quite frankly, but it tells the like a restaurateur, it tells the buyer, what do they want to know? Well, they want to know how we doing since COVID. So that's our up. Now you can have multiple ads in your carousel, right? So different ads show up at different times, but plus 50% since COVID. Well, that's a nice post-COVID story. And the franchise brokers know, like Leslie would know, show me something that's not that's COVID resistant or virus resistant or economically or economy resistant. Well, here, plus 50% since COVID. Average unit volume sales, right? So you put that in there. How much money can I make? Startup costs and that sort of thing. Now, that's the stuff the investor wants. That's the stuff the investor is going to react to. Now, when you're allocating budget, I kind of sent this to you guys. Like, remember that spreadsheet we worked with in one of the earlier modules? So, Google, when I'm setting up my budgets and what can I count Google for, I'm going to start I'm looking for Google to generate at least 1% lead to close rate on what's being form filled. Hopefully better. I'm looking for a cost per lead of under $200 aggregate. We showed you in that campaign. I think we were at 190. I try to keep it try to get it down to 150, because if we're at 150, we close at 1%, then you have the cost of acquisition of $15,000. And we've been pretty good at bringing our cost of acquisition for a franchisee under $15,000 per franchisee in ad spend. That's not how many agreements signed. Like if somebody obviously does a 3-pack or 5-pack, or Corey's working on a 14 store deal right now. Well, that would be, the same, that same 15 grand, right? Or less, it would have brought that candidate in. Questions on that? Okay. So I'm just going to kind of open it up to kind of general Q&A. So I'm kind of done with talking to you guys about what I know about Google, what I think you know. What I don't know is what additional questions you have on Google or any of the other modules that we talked about. So we'll just kind of open up to Q&A right now. So go ahead and I'll tell you, raise your hand and then come off of mute. So this is what it's like to be me, which is fine.